Morgan, we just heard from the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who laid out in a press conference at the courthouse exactly why he brought this case. He said there's been new evidence since he's come into his position as the district attorney in Manhattan, and that's why he charged the case. He said these are business fraud charges. He said these are the bread and butter of his office. He said his prosecutors had brought hundreds of similar cases. He called Manhattan the business capital of the world and said that if you don't charge these types of crimes, you allow this sort of business capital of the world to erode in terms of good business practices. That's why he felt that he needed to do this, because no one is above the law. Just moments before that, we heard from an attorney for President Trump who came out and talked to media outside the courthouse. He said today's unsealing of this indictment shows that the rule of law is dead in this country because everybody is not above the law and no one is below it. If this man's name were not Donald J. Trump, we would not be here today. So you get a sense of the competing arguments now around the case that we saw brought today. What comes next? Well, we have some sense of what's going to happen next in terms of the legal procedure. The prosecution is going to submit evidence to the defense team within 15 days, so they'll have access to everything the prosecution has. The Trump defense team is likely going to be filing pretrial motions within the next 45 days. And then look at the date for the next court hearing. It's not set until December 4th. 2023, so this year at least, but this is going to be a long process, Morgan. We're going to be dealing with this now for months to come before this is all said and done. So a long process ahead of us, but the DA saying no one is above the law in the United States, and the Trump attorney saying no one should be below it either. Morgan, back over to you.
Long process, I think, being the takeaway there. I mean, we're talking about 34 counts of falsifying business records. In terms of this, I thought it was interesting what you just said, this idea that there's new evidence that has emerged, because I think it is worth noting. It's important to note that the feds passed on this. The New York State District Attorney, the former New York State District Attorney, passed on this. The former Manhattan District Attorney passed on this as well. And yet here we are today with the unsealing of this indictment, the arraignment of a former president, the first time ever in American history we've seen something like this.
Certainly the broad contours of this have been known publicly for years, Morgan. I mean, the idea of these hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen's view on that. He's participated in media interviews for years and years about all of this. We'll have to get more detail from the Manhattan DA about what specific new evidence he's saying he had access to here that hadn't been part of the public discourse here. This case, not necessarily a slam dunk at all for the Manhattan DA. You remember John Edwards, the Democratic presidential candidate, was caught up in a similar hush money episode, and the jury in that case ended up deadlocked, and prosecutors dismissed the case, didn't come back to it and try to get another jury because it was clear that they weren't going to be successful. So juries tend to look askance at some of this political hush money stuff and think, especially when it comes to mistresses and personal, infidelities or personal peccadillos, and say, that's not really a huge deal for us. So we'll see whether the DA is able to make his case here in front of a jury. These, what we saw here today, are simply allegations. He's going to have to prove this in court now. That's
right, and I think that is key. These are allegations, and this is a situation with an indictment in the past week and the arraignment today in which a case can actually move forward, and it will be a long process, as you just laid out for us. Eamon Javers, thank you.